on this computer.
Okay, yeah, all right. Greetings, everyone. I'm Larry Williams, the director of CARMA, the Consortium for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis, currently located at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And I'm pleased to welcome you to another session of Meet the Methodologist. You may know CARMA is a university center that provides advanced research methods education, largely for the organizational and management sciences. We do in-person short courses all over the world, but we probably are better known for our webcast program, in which we bring distinguished methodologists to campus who give a live lecture that goes out to any of our 125 plus member schools globally. And so I'm here today to welcome Craig Enders to CARMA, and Craig will be giving his webcast lecture in a couple of weeks on April the 12th. So Craig is sort of coming back home, as I understand it. Craig, I think, has his degrees, both his undergraduate and his graduate degrees from Nebraska-Lincoln. Upon graduating, he was on the faculty at Arizona State for a few years, and in 2015 joined the faculty at UCLA. Craig's interests include multi-level and longitudinal modeling, as well as maximum likelihood and Bayesian estimation. But Craig is probably best known, at least from our view of the world, for his work on missing data, which includes his 2010 book on applied missing data analysis. So, Craig, welcome to CARMA, and thanks for taking the time from your busy schedule to share some of your thoughts and experiences. So, how did you end up in graduate school in ed and quant psych here at UNL?
Yeah, well, actually, I primarily have Cal Garvin in the psychology department to thank for that. So I was, let's say I was a bit listless in as an undergrad. I wasn't quite sure sort of what I wanted to do. I was a psychology major, and you know, I sort of liked kind of all of the classes I was taking were moderately interesting, and so that it wasn't kind of clear what direction to head in. And so I graduated and was just out, you know, sort of in the world for about a year, and I called Cal Garvin up. I had taken his sort of a mixture of psychometrics and statistics, sort of an advanced undergraduate course. I think it was my senior year, and that was a class that really resonated with me, and it was probably the most interesting class I had in college. And Cal's an amazing, dynamic teacher, of course, and you know, so it was easy to become interested in it. But I called, I called him after I graduated, and I think I was living in Orange County at the time, maybe. Opportunities are there for sort of following up on your class, getting programs, and in particular pointed me to the psychometrics program in the ed psych department. And so that it's an actual discipline until maybe it's too late sometimes. But yeah, Cal was the impetus for all of that.
Yep. Hey, so are you getting any, is the screen freezing on your end?
It's perfectly clear on my end.
Okay, all right. So, so what do you remember then upon finishing your degree and ending up at Arizona State? How did that happen?
Yeah, well, so it was a bit of a, there were other sort of stops along the way. So my first job out of graduate school was at the University of Miami in Coral Gables, Florida. I was there for maybe 4 years or so. And then my advisor at Nebraska, Debbie Bandelos, had left for the University of Georgia. And so I actually went back to the ed psych department and had her job for a couple of years. And then Steve West at Arizona State in psychology contacted me and asked if I would apply. And they had an amazing, still do have an amazing program there. Steve, Leona Aiken, Roger Millsap was there, David McKinnon, it was a real hub for methodology people. And so, so it was an exciting opportunity, and went down and interviewed and was fortunate enough to get the position, and then landed there for about 10 years or so.
Yeah, I was talking, so my admin is a woman named Barbara Rolfs. She's the one that was communicating with you, and she was telling me this morning the story about Alan McCutcheon coming into work and in a very despondent way saying, "Oh, Craig's leaving." And so, because Alan then was the director prior to me coming and taking over SRAM. So yeah, Arizona State's a great place. I'm very happy that all four of those people you mentioned have given webcast lectures, and I've gone out there several times, and it's a great place to visit. So I like talking to people that's been out for a while as they reflect back. Or sort of what do you remember about kind of the transition of going from being a graduate student into being a faculty member, and how was it different from what you expected, and what were some sort of lessons that you learned along the way that helped you become successful?
Wow, gosh, it's a great question. It's been so long. It's hard to remember, sort of what I was thinking back then. I think, I don't know that I had a really firm plan when I got out of graduate school, to be honest with you. I was interviewing at a couple of consulting firms as well, sort of that spring, and hadn't really sort of solidly landed on academics as an option. So I was just sort of throwing darts at the wall in a way. And when I got the job offer at UM, I thought, well, I might as well, give this a shot. I mean, probably like all new PhDs, maybe the shock to the system is just how many hours you have to put in per week when you're getting your career kick started, right? You've got all the teaching prep, to do, but then trying to find time to sort of squeeze in all of the research too. So, I think maybe that first few years was just such a whirlwind, and I got, lucky to sort of stumble into missing data at a time where there was a lot of low-hanging fruit. I think, at that point in terms of research ideas, it was just sort of starting to come on the scene. It had been around in statistics and math for a while, but I think, when I graduated in '99, it was just starting to become sort of accessible to a desktop computer. And so, so I got some good advice actually from Steve West at Arizona State. He was editor of Psychological Methods at that point in time, and Steve had given me some really good pointers on a manuscript that I submitted, and sort of got me in a groove, and that kind of pointed me in the right direction. And, I think just got lucky and kind of kept that ball rolling a little bit, and got, some the first few things I sort of was working on got published, and, sort of gives you the momentum and the self-confidence to just keep going,
Yeah. Hey, so you mentioned stumbling into missing data.
Yeah.
So was there a particular way in which that stumble occurred?
Yeah. It was actually. So I was working as a graduate student. I don't know if it's still in operation or not. But over in Ed Psych, there was a consulting center called the NEAR Center at the time, Nebraska Evaluation and Research Center, and it was all graduate students, psychometrics graduate students in there working. We consulted with faculty and other graduate students on research projects. And, you know, back in the day, it was just sort of a room with a bunch of CRT monitors, and we connected to the mainframe via terminals, you know, and then like sent print-offs over to some dank basement somewhere. And you know, so got a lot of experience analyzing data, and it was sort of through, I mean, I literally sort of remember just sitting at one of those CRT monitors one day thinking there must be something to this missing data thing. I'm always clicking, or not even clicking back then, right? Typing, you know, doing some sort of mean imputation or deleting cases because that's what the software did. And, you know, so it's just like, I wonder what impact this has on people's analysis, and wonder sort of if there's a better way. And sort of at the time, the structural equation modeling program, AMOS, had just implemented a missing data handling routine. And so, you know, it was just, as I said, I feel like I got really lucky and just stumbled into this at the right time, really. Yeah. And it was really sort of stemmed out of just work I was doing on real data with, you know, in that center.
Yeah. So, Craig, do you have like a lot of quantitative people have particular substantive areas that they focus on? Do you have substantive interests that you intertwine with your quant interests as well?
I do not actually. I have no substantive area at all. Just focusing strictly on missing data.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of the learning to the pressures of a junior faculty, and particularly the balance of teaching versus publication, that pressure. So were there, in terms of managing that, were there things that you feel like you did well to create the right balance, or was it hard for you to get that balance?
Well, you know, I would say that the department I was in at the University of Miami was very, they were very good about protecting my time, I would say. There was someone who had come before me who had not been successful in the tenure endeavor. It sort of got wrapped up in just too much consultation with faculty and things like that, which is easy to do as a quant person, well know. And, you know, so I think they were very good about sort of mentoring me and, you know, keeping expectations reasonable in terms of course preps and consultation load and things like that. And, you know, so I think it was just that, and then combination of long hours, and it wasn't long hours in a bad way. I mean, the whole sort of research, and I love teaching and I love doing research, and so both of those were just sort of intrinsically rewarding, and it didn't, you know, it didn't seem like I was working a lot of hours at the time. I don't look back on that time, you know, thinking, oh, that was a terrible grind. It was just a lot of hours doing fun stuff.
Yeah. So I'm interested in your teaching, and like, if you go through the courses that you teach, the topics that you teach, are there some that you like more than others and that you enjoy more than others?
Well, yeah, somewhat surprisingly, maybe missing data is my least favorite thing to teach, to be honest with you. There's a lot of other things I like better. I enjoy teaching multi-level modeling. I like teaching longitudinal modeling. probably actually my favorite class to teach right now is undergrad statistics, which I haven't really taught since graduate school, actually. And then when I got to UCLA, you know, we have these huge 250 student sections of intro stats, and I've been teaching a lot of those, and just having a great time doing it. You know, I sort of feel like now I'm in Cal's role a little bit, right? And my first day of class, I spend sort of as an advertisement to the quantitative field and let them know sort of that quantitative exists and all of these, you know, different job opportunities, and just sort of talk about, you know, statistics and psychometrics as a discipline within psychology. And, you know, so that's, you know, a couple of those students have already sort of found their way into graduate school. And so it's just, you know, it's great to be able to pluck a few of those people out of the crowd and turn them to the dark side.
Yeah, yeah. So are there things of the various concepts that you cover in that intro course? Are there any that always, like when you start the beginning of the semester, you know they're going to struggle, right? There's just something that they really, they struggle making it click in spite of everything that you do to try to get.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's got to be, it's the same thing every time. It's the idea of sampling distributions, right? And all that brings with it. And then like standard error and sampling distributions. And it's just so, you know, I think it's just so inherently abstract.
Yeah.
You can show them with simulations, and it's just inherently abstract. And so every quarter I try to think of new ways to tackle that, but hopefully one day I'll be able to crack it before I retire.
Yeah. Hey, so over the years, how do you think you've changed as a researcher or writer based on the experiences that you've gained publishing?
Gosh, well, hopefully I've become a better writer over the years, right? I guess we all hope to do that. I think, you know, the thing may be that, you know, of course you become more automated at it, right? So something that took you, you know, 60 hours in your first couple of years, like takes much less time now. So the automation certainly helps, but I guess the thing, I'm sure this is true for everyone, right, is that sort of picking out at the beginning, maybe, which is why I said I feel like I was lucky. At the beginning, you just sort of, I felt like maybe I was throwing darts at the wall for research ideas. And fortunately, there was a big board to throw darts at, right? And you know, I think over the years, it's you just sort of develop better skills at sort of identifying research problems, but also research problems that will like resonate with substantive researchers as well. So problems become better at sort of identifying research topics that are maybe practically important to people, to real world people. Whereas I think at the beginning it was, as I said, I think it was much less efficient at that process.
Yeah. How about as a reviewer of research, how do you think, as you've been over the course of your career done more reviewing, how do you approach that now, and is it different than how you did early on when you started reviewing?
Yeah, well, again, I think, you know, the efficiency of that has completely changed, right? But then also, gosh, I mean, I just think as you sort of gain more expertise yourself and more skills in a domain, maybe you're probably better able to provide useful feedback for the authors, right? And I think I've probably become more sympathetic to authors as well. I mean, you can always find a million things to, to complain about, in a manuscript, but sort of begin to adopt the feeling that just because you can doesn't mean that you should, right? And maybe try to limit feedback on reviews to, just sort of filter the important points from the lesser important, maybe even stylistic kinds of things, right? So, yeah, I think that's maybe the main thing. Become more efficient and more sympathetic as a reviewer, possibly.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're very excited to have you come in a couple of weeks to give your webcast lecture. Can you give us a kind of a preview of that lecture and maybe comment on what some of your most current research interests are as relates to missing data?
Yeah, for sure. So the thing I've been working on the last better part of 3 years or so, I got a grant from the Institute of Educational Sciences about 3 or 4 years ago to work on multiple imputation for clustered data, so multi-level imputation. At that point in time, the landscape was, and the landscape still is very sort of scattered, and there's software programs that will impute level 1 variables but not level 2 variables. There's just lots of odds and ends, I think, out of the software world. There wasn't sort of a coherent, cohesive strategy, I think, for multi-level imputation. And so I've spent the last 3 years developing imputation methods for these multi-level models that can handle sort of missingness at any level, up to 3 levels, and categorical variables. And most recently have been working on like interactions, things like that. So how to deal with interactive effects, nonlinear effects in single and multi-level models. And yeah, so I built a software package, a standalone software package for Mac and Windows and Linux that does these routines. And so so the talk will just be a bit of an overview of multi-level imputation within this framework, and sort of how to impute clustered data with random intercepts or random coefficients, interaction effects, and sort of how to tackle that problem. Then with some some illustrations in the software.
Yeah. Well, last question. What do you like to do for fun?
Wow. I think in Southern California, just stepping outside is is pretty fun. I'm fortunate enough to I bought a condo by the beach last summer, 3 blocks from the beach. And so just literally stepping outside and walking around the neighborhood is just a huge gift on a daily basis. So that's, just anything outdoors, be it riding bikes on the beach or just, putzing around the neighborhood. It's, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a great life, a little bit different than life here in Lincoln. But we do appreciate you taking the time to chat with us this afternoon. And again, that's Friday, April the 12th is the webcast. And so safe travels, and we'll see you then.
Thanks, Larry. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right.